Welcome to My Generation, the podcast sponsored by South Shore Senior News. I am your host, Steve Dubin. Today, we are going to talk about solar, the bright opportunity to save money and save the environment. Today's guest is Greg Aborn, who is a Plymouth resident and the newly named president of Plymouth Solar Energy, a solar company that evaluates and installs solar systems within 50 miles range of their downtown Plymouth offices. And Greg is a Plymouth resident. He lives in Ponds of Plymouth and was educated locally and has been in the industry for a while and has a very good sense for what works, what doesn't work, and the various options for solar for those who are looking to either help save the environment one house at a time or save some money long-term. So Greg, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Well, so why don't we start out, Greg, by talking about your background photo. That is an actual house that you helped design for solar.
Yes, this is a house we just completed this year in Wareham. Obviously, you can see the solar, but we also did a battery backup system for them as well. So they kind of have a nice, full, complete, state-of-the-art package over there.
And so what does a battery system mean to the homeowner?
Backup power in the event of power outages, grid failures.
Okay. And how quick does that battery kick in the event of a electrical outage?
Extremely fast. LED lights might flicker. Everything else stays on. You don't have to reset any of the clocks on the microwave or the stove. Your computer will stay going. As long as you don't have an LED monitor, that might flicker because it's such a low drop. But typically, we have customers that don't even know. It'll kick over, they're up and running, seamless transition. Internet stays up, it's that fast. It's impressive.
All right. And then how long will it help continue to power your house, depending on when the utilities can get everything back online?
I always tell people that is completely subjective. You know, if you stand in front of the fridge with the door open for 20 minutes trying to decide what you want to eat, obviously your battery will drain faster. But typically what we do is take the loads the owner would like to back up, fridge, lights, well pump if you have one, stuff like that. And we ask them, how long do you want this battery to last without any sun? So worst case scenario. And typically they want 2 to 3 days, and that covers more than the bulk of the outages we experience. You tie in the fact that they have solar that now stays up and running during the day when the sun's out as well. So that battery could power their loads indefinitely with the sun out. And for this house, it would be about 3.5 days before the battery alone would go down.
Okay. And so I think there's a misconception with solar that your only option to capture the sun is with roof panels. There are other options, correct?
Yeah, we can put them ground mounts, pole mounts, dual axis trackers. We've built them on retaining walls. We even have a demo unit floating on a cranberry bog in a reservoir pond. So if it basically just comes down to money, if you got the money and you want it, we can do it. So
okay. And so how do you even determine how many panels are necessary? Do you just try to fill up the roof, or is there some mathematical formula?
There'll be a couple restrictions. One will be the physical roof size. If you only have so much viable roof, you can only fit where you can fit. I broke my last roof stretcher, so we can't make them any bigger. Other than that, we take the electric bill, we crunch the monthly kilowatt hour usage, their demand, and we'll size a solar system that'll meet that demand averaged out over the course of a year. So with solar, you have better months than others. So you want to factor in you're overproducing some months and saving that to use in the less productive months when the sun isn't as high and you don't get the nice long bright days. Over that year, it'll average out and zero that bill. Otherwise, if you build a solar system to cover the worst month, you will never be able to benefit from the overproduction in all of the other better months. You'll bank credits you can never touch.
Okay. And so, are there any houses that are just not appropriate for solar?
Some, your panels need sun. If you don't have any, you can't get any. They're just not going to produce anything that's worth the investment. The more they produce, the better your return on investment is. The worse they do, the less you get in return. So some people don't have control of trees. Their neighbors own them, the towns own them. They're big, beautiful trees they can't cut down. That's a factor. Elevation, if you're in a hole, you can't really do much about that. But some houses don't really work. But if you explore the options of ground trackers, poles, walls, roofs, usually we can find something that'll give them a nice return.
Okay, and for homeowners to get a sense of that, do you offer any kind of complimentary audit that can give them a sense of, what you can do and what it might cost?
Yeah, so typically what we'll do is a feasibility study. Obviously, we want you to make a good decision, a good purchase. So if you're not a good candidate, you shouldn't buy it. And we want you to know that up front so that, that there's no misconceptions or anything. So we'll go out, we'll do a solar analysis for shading impact if there is any. We have a commercial drone license. We can capture images of the roofs to make sure the panels we want to put up there will actually fit. Vent pipes, stuff like that often are on roofs, so you got to work around those. But then just some of the roofs are intricate. You have hips, valleys, multiple facets. You need to be able to work within the constraints of the roof itself, plus meet code. So you can't really jam a panel over every square inch of a roof and have it fly anymore.
And so what's the starting point for an audit? Does the consumer, the homeowner, send you information? What do they send you?
Realistically, we don't need anything to do an audit. We can tell you if your roof is a good candidate, and then we can basically max out a PV design for you without any information. This is the most it'll hold and what it'll produce. Ideally, we would get the electric bill, break that down so we could size that system accordingly and not overbuild it if we can avoid it. So the electric bill is key.
Okay, and then I understand that one of the innovative things you do is not only show up and, get ready to climb around the yard and the roof, but you also have drones that could give you a bird's eye view.
Yes, we have our commercial drone license, so we can fly and use that drone for business purposes. It has a phenomenal camera. I just tell the operators, get me a good enough picture where I can count the shingles, and I'll be able to make the rest work.
Okay. All right. And what about tax credits? I think that's misunderstood, and I guess it's a moving goalpost as to where legislation stands from year to year. Where are we now, both for state and federal credits?
The state are big spenders. They're willing to kick in up to $1,000 one time.
Oh.
Federal has a 30% tax credit available that they voted and extended with the Inflation Reduction Act for another 10 years. So that 30%, unless they make a decision to veto it or take it out of the offerings, that should be there for the next 10 years.
Okay, and so what is the standard sort of generalized ROI on solar?
Typically, depending on the complexity and the costs to install the system, average, we would say about 15 to 18% return on investment over the course of 25 years.
Okay, and what's the payback period typically for the cost of the infrastructure?
So without getting too into it, it's about 6 years for residential and a little bit shorter for commercial because of the depreciation availability and implications there for their legal tax write-offs.
Okay, sounds good. And then you guys have coined the phrase or used the phrase anyway, hybrid home. What does that really mean to you?
The current conditions with the utility, the electrical infrastructure, and the ongoing problems that they are experiencing, we decided to come up with this hybrid house. It is technically a grid-tied solar system with storage, but the grid is more or less there for backup. So it's functioning in an off-grid capability with the benefits of the grid should you need it. So our hybrid home is our off-grid, on-grid. We don't want to be reliant on the utility anymore. We want energy independence. We'll give them this hybrid state-of-the-art home where it's grid backup.
Okay. So that's a good explanation. And I think from this conversation, people get the sense of the complexity of what solar is. But what I see a lot is that anybody sometimes who can sling a hammer, like a roofer, or a carpenter, or even a general contractor, sometimes masquerade as solar companies, correct?
Correct. And they typically find themselves in a lot of hot water. The paperwork, the processes, the applications, there is a lengthy, complicated process for you to get the approval to build your system and then the okay from the utility to turn it on and actually use it. And that's just one facet. The municipalities, towns, the building codes are changing constantly. Electrical codes, fire codes now are involved. There's never-ending changes for setback requirements, storage locations, sizes. All of that is constantly changing. If you don't know that environment well enough, you get stuck very quickly, very deep, and you can't really get it going again.
Which sort of leads me to, because of the complexity of that installation, and from my understanding, it can be over 30 different permits and pieces of paper that need to be signed off in some kind of reasonable sequence so that a system can get installed. That very system alone has put some solar companies into bankruptcy, and some of the big guys have failed, leaving the homeowner as an orphan in terms of maintenance, and making sure that their system continues to operate in a maximum way. Do you reach out to any of those folks who did not go through you initially to have the installation done?
Typically, they end up calling at some point or another. It is one of the things that keeps us as busy as we are, is servicing these legacy systems. The company is out of business, they folded up shop, whatever the reason may be. I even get calls from customers where the system's brand new, still under warranty from the installer, but they hated it so much they won't let them do the work for free. They want to pay me instead. So, but yeah, we get a lot of calls for these systems. Some of them have been completed physically, but they didn't know how to do the paperwork to get the blessings to turn it on. So they've just been sitting there idle for years, physically complete systems, and there's nothing you can do with it.
So what can go wrong with the system?
In terms of functionality?
Yeah.
Everything has hiccups. Any piece of technology that's out there is at some point in time going to have a problem in some form or another. With current code requirements, there is a unit under each panel, more or less, on the roofs, and those sometimes fail. You have to replace them. The inverters themselves, there's firmware updates to keep them code compliant, operating with the grid and the changes they make within the grid. So the parameter needs updating for seamless integration. If it's out of whack, it will not work. It'll shut down. Inverters do go bad themselves. Squirrels will chew up a roof job. They'll eat the PV wire. It's a nice, tasty soy-based snack for the UV protection and a warm place to hide. There's a good amount that can go wrong.
Okay. And so my understanding is one of the things that you offer your customers and those who become your customers, even from other systems, is that you monitor all systems via computer and from your downtown Plymouth office.
Yes, I have a team of operational staff, and every morning their first priority for given some oddball, things that pop up here and there, they check on the status of all of our jobs across the multiple platforms that we monitor them on. So each manufacturer has their own platform, and we install several manufacturers' equipment. So we We have to go through all of them. The storage have different sites. The solar only, they have their own sites. And then I inherit the service customers who, that's a wide range of equipment and monitoring and everything in between. So we pick it all up, we get in there and we check them all.
Okay.
We
And
find any issues, we jump right on it. It's typically, if a customer knows there's an issue before us, it's incredibly rare. You know, we're on it. There's a new part coming most of the time, or we've had tech support do some resets, some troubleshooting, or we make an appointment to get on site and diagnose it further.
okay. All right. And what about the option of leasing versus buying? What are your thoughts on that?
Buying is always in the customer's best interest. You own the system, you benefit entirely from all the available credits, incentives, full value of the electrical production from the solar. It is in your best interest and you own it. You can do anything you want with it. If you buy a system from us, if for whatever reason you don't want us to touch it anymore, you can have someone else come and work on it. Your cousin, brother, it's your system. If you lease a system, you now get 2 electric bills, one from the utility and one from the leasing company. Typically, you will save every month versus just having the utility provide power. It's not that much money. And if the system goes down, you're responsible for both bills. If the system doesn't produce enough, you're getting the same bill from the lease company plus the electrical bill from the utility company, and you don't own it. I can't go and touch a lease system without blessing from the leased company because that's their property. And now you have a partner basically owning your house. So your roof is their property for 20 years or whatever the term of the lease is. It's very, if it's the only option and you want to save a couple of bucks, that's an option. But typically what I see happening is the roof wasn't in good enough shape, leaks occur, the leasing company, they have no staff, they have no service techs that can get out there. We end up getting a lot of these calls. And they're telling people they're 9 months, a year out to remove some panels to fix a leak. In the meantime, every time it rains, this poor guy's taking a shower in his kitchen.
Okay. And
So I
so,
would never suggest leasing it unless it's the last possible option.
and how does all this impact the potential, sale in the future of your home?
It depends on the contract and the company. A lot of the times, the new owner has to take possession of the lease. Sometimes they'll allow you to transfer it to your new home. They'll take it off and put it on your new house for a fee. Some companies for a fee will remove it. But typically, there's a lien on the house, there's a third-party owner. You go to sit down with real estate people and mortgage brokers and they see this. A lot of lease companies won't really let you out of it that easy. And it's not fun. It's very difficult. Very frustrating.
Okay. All right. So that being said, what would one expect for the life expectancy of a solar system?
So right now, the panels themselves have a performance warranty depending on the manufacturer, of either 25 to 30 years, where after that time period, that panel will still produce, depending on the manufacturer, between 85 up to 88% of its day one nominal rating. So they do degrade a little bit, but it's less than half a point a year. And they don't really just stop working. They'll go forever until they break.
Okay. And what about, these solar batteries and the backup system?
What we use right now in the chemistry, the form factor, the technology, they're warranted for 10 years. But lithium ion, it's a very nice chemistry. We use the ferrous phosphate, safest out there, and they degrade with age, not use. So use it all you want and experience, benefit from it, really put it to work. But at the end of 10 years, it's warranted for at least 80% of its usability. So if you extrapolate that out, they're going to last quite some time.
Okay. And what about, I guess the trend I see is that America and perhaps the world is going electric, that gas appliances are being denied as a new source of cooking in new homes in some areas. Cars, everyone's converting, not everyone, but many people are converting to e-cars. What are your thoughts on, electric and trying to keep up with that?
They kind of put the cart before the horse on that one. Boston actually just passed new construction code requirements now where everything has to be electric, no more gas appliances. I don't know if it was Boston citywide or just parts of it, but it is coming. Towns are picking it up. There are already certain towns that require all electrical construction, future, designs for electrical equipment. Every house now has to be built with the ability to plug an EV car in, EV charger ability, and bigger electrical services to cover all that. It's a big demand. The constraint is, again, the grid, the infrastructure. If you force everybody to go electric, we can't support what we have now. So there are some concerns, and the DPU and Department of Energy, they're going through hearings and meetings now to see what they need to do to upgrade the grid to support this growth and strain. So I'm not a big proponent of forcing anybody to do anything. I don't like that idea, but I do understand that solar storage and getting away from the combustibles is the future.
And, I mentioned e-cars. I understand that one of the things that you could do is, even as a standalone system, is build a carport, that solar carport that would power that car. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So the cars typically have a very big battery bank, so it is a little bit confusing. But we can do a canopy, carport, pergola, any type of ground mount design in that aspect to make it anything an EV charging station. That being said, the amperage and kilowatt hour requirements means that you need a lot to charge that car directly. So typically what you do is pull from the grid and then feed back to the grid with the solar's less rate. But if a customer said that they want an independent car charging station, we can do that. Yes, it just requires a little more solar and some batteries.
Okay. And I think, we're still in a little bit of shock from the pandemic of what the supply chain, what tricks the supply chain can play on us. How are you seeing any impact on getting materials?
The materials we only use premium tier 1 solar panels. That they're actually, our preferred one is made in Georgia. We haven't had any impact from them whatsoever. We have a very good relationship with all of our distributors, so they tend to take very good care of us. But otherwise, we typically don't see much of a shortage. Our battery stuff is all made in the US. Briggs and Stratton bought Simplify batteries. They're California based. No problem getting those. We haven't really seen much.
Okay. And then I think there's also a misconception on the initial price of solar. Do you have sort of general starter packages that sort of put people's mind at ease?
It's a lot of people are a little, put off at first. They expect it for a much less amount than it typically is, but it is not cheap, we'll say. And just like anything else, you really get what you pay for. But our smaller systems will start around $25,000.
Okay.
That's installed, turnkey contract, permits, applications, approval, commissioning, activation. You're up and running.
Okay. And then one of my questions is, so we're on the South Shore. There are peninsulas and little islands and places that, are off grid anyway. Are you serving some of those areas like Saquesh?
Yeah, many. We have customers on Saquesh, the Duxbury Beach Preservation. A gentleman who wants to work with us, he's building a brand new off-grid house on Plymouth Beach, and he wants all the luxuries of being grid tied. So that's interesting. I have another gentleman, same situation, building a brand new house, but he wants to be energy independent. So it will be that hybrid house we discussed. Batteries, solar, we'll even have a standby generator for when things are really bad, and then he'll have grid backup if he needs it.
Okay.
So we service all of it, yeah.
Okay. And are there anything that we haven't covered that the consumer should have in their mind when they're talking to a potential solar partner, so they make sure they're vetting them appropriately?
So we use a completely independent financing option called UMass 5, My Solar Loan. We don't want to tie ourselves to any financial lenders. This is completely independent, up to the customer, and our customers have had great success with them. They offer a zero down solar loan to own your system. So it begins to look a lot better versus leasing or any other option. You want to buy it and you want to own it and have free power after it's paid off. But typically when you're looking for an installer, I would find someone local and established, good reputation, long-standing history of being in business. You don't want anybody that's only been around for 6 months or anything like that. Personable, you can get in touch with them, because you could install a solar system in a day. It's not the nuts and bolts in the panels. It's communication, support, service. It's after the installation that really, really matters the most. If that system doesn't stay up and running, there's a lot of wasted money and time on your part. So these companies, a lot of them like to just get your money, install it, and get out of it. And it's not in the customer's best interest. So I always say local, walk in somewhere so you can find somebody, shake their hand, look them in the eye, established, good reputation. So that's my recommendations. These big national companies, they don't care about anybody. They just want your money.
Gotcha. Okay. So that sort of brings us to the end of this conversation. I'm sure people are going to want to know the best way to reach you.
You can go to our website, PlymouthSolarEnergy.com. We have a contact us button you can click. We have request a quote. You can find us all there, or you could shoot an email to info@PlymouthSolarEnergy.com. If you would like to find me directly, it's Greg@PlymouthSolarEnergy.com. Feel free to reach out anytime, any questions. I love helping people make the best decision, whether it's for solar or not. If it's in their interest, they're going to be happy with us no matter what. So,
well, thank you for being on with us today. Your information was appropriately illuminating. So this has been another session of South Shore Senior News' podcast. If you have somebody who has a topic or an interesting story to share with our audience of seniors and the sandwich generation who work with seniors, we'd love to hear from you. Go to our website, South Shore Seniors. You can find us just simply by Googling us. And Greg, thanks again for being on.
Thanks for having me, Steve. This was a
All right.
pleasure.
All right. Take care.